my role is as Director of Jain Humanities, History of Advanced Studies, which we are discovering. Some those of you from outside JNU and found it difficult to reach here, don't feel too marginalized. Most people in JNU don't know this place. And one of my ambitions is really to make this the adda for JNU. The adda in Humanities studies, where I'm not promised JNU any deliverables at all. And we're just taking a space here for people to be in conversation with each other, to be in conversation across disciplines, with social scientists, with scientists, right? Without getting into any of the nonsense of what are the results that you're aiming at, what are you going to deliver. But I think the process is as important as the result, and the process itself is a result very often. And that's how I mark Humanities and Brinda and talking about, my colleague Brinda Bose was talking about going in the seminar, and immediately said, why anybody else looks for a great names? Because that's what we're doing here. Right? And so actually in that sense, I'm happy that Brinda said yes, because it allows me to showcase the kind of work the JSS wants to do, the kind of space JSS wants to be. So welcome everybody, and I don't want to take on more than I can. And with legal program.
Thank you, Professor Asad. Yes, I really want to thank first the Institute of Advanced Study, JNU, for giving this space for today's session to happen. As you know, we have assembled here in the wake of the publication of Shrapnel Minima writings from Humanities Underground. Now, last week we had kick-started this two-part series at University of Delhi, asking and reflecting on what might constitute method or methods in the study of humanities at this point of time. Today we have 4 speakers who would visit the same question, but the vehicle is slightly different. We shall all try to address the question of method by making sense of the question of what might be called new at this point of time. How might we envisage newness at this point of time in history, especially in arts and literature. I myself intrigued to hear the speaker speak and then the comments and interrogations later on. But maybe I'll take this opportunity to slightly clarify where Humanities Underground is coming from, a little bit of that. Many of you know that it records a kind of a space, quite eclectically, really intuitively, to be really frank about it, and trying to make sense of what might be new. It is pure speculation, and subjective speculation at that. Many friends have been contributing to this fledgling zone, conceptually too, within and outside of the academic world. Actually, in the last 2.5 years, we started 5 years ago. In the last 2.5 years, the kind of writings that we are getting is mostly outside of the academia and translations. So when we talk about method, I guess we need to also think, that is, I think in terms of the porosity between the academic and the creative, between on one side the moderate and the rigorous and the sane world of academia, and on the other hand the very dramatic and impulsive and sometimes confrontational, detached world of the outside. Now, I really, to be honest, come as an alien to this space with dilettantish knowledge of the crest and troughs of writings in the subcontinent or the regions thereof. But I come from a different zone, and I thought I'll just tell you a little bit of that. See, I'm a sucker for pamphlets and polemics and playbooks and libels and the really cornucopian world of early modern European literature. That's my area, academic area, so to say. So that's a world where it's impossible to define what might be creative, inspired writing from what is propaganda, what is a religious tract from what looks like a secular heresy, what might be a document of natural philosophy, which is claiming to be scientific writing in early modern times, things like that. So it's a riot of genres which I usually deal with. Genres like psalm becoming prophecy, extempore rhymes becoming scurrilous ditty, interludes becoming ridicules, libelous coughing sometimes becoming Georgics and ideas of questions of land and enclosures and things like that coming. So that is the kind of my interest. A very different world historically, but temperamentally, I think somewhere that impulse, the impulse to, and I think it's also a methodological impulse. I'll talk about that, of theatricality, of scurrility, of restlessness, is something that is part of this world, Humanities underground. And all of us know the best place, again in European imagination, let us say, and other parts of the world, in the late 19th century, early 20th century, there's a similar kind of explosion in ideas. They're replete with examples from wonderful ideas of Russian modernism, let us say, or South America, where you have all sorts of interesting magazines and journals coming out at that point of time, which has a very serious engagement with a sense of irony, a methodological impulse of that's kind of ontological position of many of those magazines and write-ups. And my sense, especially about of this new time right now when the World Wide Web is still free, it might not be in India, where it's not just magazines like Partisan Review or Social Text or Constellations or Raritan, which are all academic journals in disguise, funded by benevolent university departments, but a new wave of magazines which has a kind of parasitic relationship with the academe, like say Dissent or N+1 or the New Inquiry, the Jacobin, which are really challenging or sort of unsettling the tasteful and settled ways of, say, the New York Review or the more conservative, the New Republic, let us say. So, so this is a time of opportunity, not necessarily a time of crisis. Remember Benjamin and Brett's 1930s journal called Criticism in Crisis, trying to sort of define the tribes in some ways. So the impulse of the minimal, I'll talk about that a little bit really quickly, and the impulse of the obstinate, the pig-headed, the detached, rancorous, sometimes very ungenerous, alienated sort of approach, is part of many Hindi web portals now. Zaidi can talk much more than me, but as an amateur, when I read, say, Janki Pool or Banas Jan or Teachy Spelling or Achia or Kabar Khana, to name a few. Even in print, the resurfaced Pahal, of course, but Jalsa definitely, some volumes of Paki, and there are many others, I'm sure, which I don't know much. But eclectically, when I go to these places, I feel that they're trying to make sense of, record the time that we are in. I know a little bit about Bangla world, where the print world is more vibrant than the internet space. And there has been, from the 70s at least, I'm not talking about the 19th century, I'm not going that far, but even from the 1960s, late 60s and 70s, the impulse of, say, Shawshanks frontier and now has been taken side by side in Wakankar Chakravarty's Onik, or more political kind of magazines on one side, or Manthan or Charbak. But there are fantastic literary magazines in the past 10-12 years from Bengal, which are deliberately saying that we are not political. This is very interesting. Although I sense an impulse of politics, a different kind of impulse. You can think about a fantastic magazine called Onubarton and then Yan Bindu, and not all from Calcutta. There are fantastic magazines from, say, Jalpaiguri, North Bengal, or Birbhum, or other places that I've traveled. All of them are not necessarily cosmopolitan. Some of them are very provincial. Some of them are trying to understand the local in a deeper sense, but others are have a new sense of the world, trying to understand that. So, suppose this particularisms, I was wondering, our reveling in the diverse and the immediacy of this particularisms, is it possible to generalize this impulse? Is it possible to generalize? Can we think of the new as things in general? And can we conceptualize our time from these uncertain compounds and pass the contemporary through some sort of systematic consideration? I don't know whether it's worth it or not, but just to make a sense of that, the sense of the configurations that we're seeing, and make sense of the contemporaneity of our times. Can we, I was also thinking, is it worth it to internally represent the discipline of humanities? That is to say, with full consideration of history and social science on one side, and natural sciences on the other side, and pass through humanities, whether that is a possibility or not. Now, when I think of method, I think of a fabric which is reconstituting its weave, so to say. And when I use the word minimal in this book, I think of a tension between the autonomous aesthetic sphere on one hand and the practicality of the life world on the other, and how they come together at certain points. The idea of the artistic play on one side and the idea of life's possibilities of transformation on the other side. The minimal, I thought, was I'm not exactly happy with this term, but I sort of want to make a sense of this agnostic quality of art's conditions, this sort of negative dialectic through which life must pass through a relentlessly carried sort of promise of art, which is not just sensuous renewal, but also an experience which is threatened and oblique, a relentless flagellation of our times. Now, Humanities Underground, intuitively, I think, doesn't believe that literature is a flares of disinterested pastiche. We are not, ever aesthetic in the sense of flashes and carpe diems of the light spirit, but where the idea of the ephemera passes through a certain kind of build-up, which remains to be universally a kind of condition of non-sufficiency. I'll try to explain that, what I mean by that. And let me end actually by taking an example to show what I think of minimal, that might make it slightly clearer, and then hand over to the speakers. I'd like to read a poem, a few lines from this fantastic, truly underground poet who writes from Rohtak. Shubha is her name, and whose economy of expression is precise, and whose sense of the political is a way of generalizing the subjective participants of this universal condition that we inhere at this point of time. And I'll just read one short poem by her, and then I'll translate it and just end my introduction. It's called औरत के बिना जीवन. औरत दुनिया से डरती है और दुनियादार की तरह जीवन बिताती है. वो घर में और बाहर मालिक की चाकरी करती है. वो रोती है, उल्हाने देती है, कोसती है, पीटती है और मर जाती है. बच्चे आवारा हो जाते हैं, बूढ़े असहाय और मर्द अनाथ हो जाते हैं. वे अपने घर में चोर की तरह रहते हैं और दुखपूर्वक अपनी थाली खुद मांजते हैं. Life without women. The woman is scared of the world and spends her life worldly wise. She serves her Lord at home and outside. She cries, reproaches, curses, gets beaten, and dies.